Well, welcome everybody. We are so glad to have you here today. We've got a wonderful speaker. And like I said to a few of you, we've got bad food with a healthy speaker. So go ahead and enjoy your donut. I just wanted to remind you before we get started that next month we have the FBI. We have the Senior Supervisor for Terrorism. Hopefully he'll be here and not over in Beirut or someplace. I don't know. But the FBI has offices right here on Clio Road and down in Cincinnati, and I'm very fortunate to have a lot of their personal information. So we're very lucky to have him, and he's going to speak on local crime that is related to businesses and your employees. All the things that can happen day to day, you know, money exchanges and all that sort of thing. And anybody that's not a member of this organization can come. Just have them call us at the office and we'll make a reservation for them. So anything else, any questions or anything? I'm going to hand it over to Will. And Will is going to introduce our speaker.
So as a reminder, a couple months ago we had the police department talk about all manner of things, but one of the topics was distracted driving. The National Safety Council released their statistics for 2020. And where is it? 3,142 people died in crashes related to distracted driving. We all know the new law in Ohio took effect. It's fully, they can pull you over now for it. It's earlier in the month, so keep that in mind. It's a dangerous, bad thing to do, but I still see it every day. Our speaker today is going to be Becky Cobb. She's going to, from Personally Fit. She's the founder of the company, but she's going to give us some information on Checklist for a Healthy Life, how to manage your nutrition, exercise, and sleep. And Becky has been in the business of personal fitness for over 40 years, is certified by the American College of Sports Medicine, the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, Functional Movement Systems, and several other certifications. So, Becky?
There are two primary people that I'm going to focus on today, and these are the two books that if anybody's interested in looking at them. Dr. Mark Hyman has been a functional medicine specialist for a really long time. He's very much an authority, and this book in particular, Food, What the Heck Should I Eat, is probably one of the best that I've seen in my career that helps you understand why and how and what and everything like that. It's not like reading a research project, which puts me straight to sleep. I don't know about anybody else. But he really, really does a really great job of covering a lot of things. And I'm going to just read an excerpt later when we get to that point. The other person that's coming up in the functional world right now is Dr. Peter Attia. And both of these gentlemen are really working on longevity. How do we live longer, better? That's the University of Dayton program that a friend of mine and I are working on together. So that's just a little. When you hear me talk about Dr. Mark or Dr. Peter, these are the folks that I brought with me today to help to substantiate what we're going to deal with. In order for us to deal with what the checklist looks like, I think we have to deal with what is a healthy life. What does that mean to each one of you? If there's one thing that we've learned throughout the several last decades, it's that everybody's different. I'm wired differently than you are, and the next person that you're sitting next to. So really part of the challenge is finding out what works for you as an individual. And everybody is motivated differently. And you've heard this before, I'm sure, in any other behavioral kind of conversation. What's your why? If we're going to deal with anything that I'm going to talk about today, and it has anything to do with a behavior change, then there has to be a reason why. I mean, for my clients, why do they start working out? Well, maybe they just got a new grandbaby and they know they're going to need to get up and down off the floor in a year to be able to play with a toddler or to pick him or her up or anything like that. Some people are getting ready to take a trip and they want to be healthy enough to do the trip. If they're going to walk the hills of Italy, then they want to be able to do that. So what is your personal definition? Some folks, it's to be free of disease. Anybody have anyone in your family who's dealing with cognitive difficulties, memory problems, dementia, Alzheimer's? These are huge, huge issues in our world right now and in our population. And if we're dealing with how do we get there, what happens with that? So what is it? What does it mean to you? You really have to be the one that determines that. And unfortunately, for some of us, we don't find our why until we're sick. And then when we're sick, all we want to be is well. And when we're well, we're like, well, I can edge my bets on certain things. So we're really going to try to deal with that. But in order for anything to sink in with you, you have to know what are you personally working on, or what do you want to be working on. We'll click it. All right. So I talked about Dr. Peter Attia, and he talks about the 4 horsemen. And I'm just going to kind of zip through these because I hope to build as we go along, and I hope to leave time for questions at the end of it. But the 4 horsemen that really deal with and account for most of our problems are listed there: heart disease, cancer, neurodegenerative diseases, like we talk about dementia, Alzheimer's, and then we're dealing with type 2 diabetes and related metabolic dysfunction. And the science that we're going to talk about today for just a minute is going to be about metabolic dysfunction, because at the root of everything, when you dial down, we can get down to some things that are very controllable for us if we just want to change a habit here or there. Going back to our why, if we have enough motivation to be able to do that for ourselves, okay? These 4 things account for most of the mortality in the United States between those 4 things. And all of them have in common metabolic syndrome. So metabolic syndrome, as you can see, at the heart of this is insulin resistance. Has anybody heard of insulin resistance? Okay. So real quickly, insulin is a hormone that we need and that we all have and that we all produce. And it matters because insulin usually helps controlling getting the sugar in our system into our cells, okay, where it can be used and where it can work. If we are resistant, then it can't get into the cell like it's supposed to, floats around in your blood, causes elevated blood glucose, and does anybody know what that leads to? Type 2 diabetes. Type 1 obviously is a different family, but type 2 diabetes in the United States is growing, and the real scary part of it is that it's growing mostly in our children. So lots of reasons, but that's where we are. So metabolic syndrome is when all of this is happening together. So we're really dealing with high blood pressure, high triglycerides, our cholesterol that gets too high, our adipose tissue, mainly belly fat. If we're 40 inches around the belly button, 40 inches for men, 35 inches for women, and then if you already know that you have an elevated fasting glucose, these are all things that go together that fall into that category that's defined as metabolic syndrome. It results in a combination, that begins this slow descent into illness. Metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, and the third thing that we're going to talk about is inflammation. So inflammation, if you cut your finger and you have a paper cut and it starts healing and it gets red, that is inflammation. Your immune system is saying, hey, there's a cut, send out the healers, let's go in and take care of it and deal with it that way. That's inflammation and our immune system at its best, where it's healing and dealing with everything like that. When we have low-grade inflammation in our system, in our gut, and in our arteries and running rampant, then it begins the slow descent if it's there for a long time. And it usually is the precursor to pretty much every disease that we have, especially the 4 horsemen, okay? So I'm trying to give you the bad news before the good news. So are you with me? Okay. All right, so we have those to go. In our current medical system right now, and I am not a politician and I have no need to go there, but Peter Attia calls it medicine 2.0, where we are right now. You all know that we have a very cause and effect system. If you have high blood pressure and you go to the doctor, then they're going to give you a pill for your high blood pressure. They're not necessarily going to say, how many minutes a week do you exercise? Or are you getting good sleep? Or are you controlling anything about your diet? They're just going to say, here's your pill, and take your pill, and your blood pressure will go down. That's fine. It's taken us a long time, and it's kept a lot of people healthy in that system. Medicine 3.0 is more of what the functional doctors are doing now, and they're doing what I just said. So why do you have high blood pressure? Is it something, that can be controlled? Are there factors that are within your wheelhouse that you can take care of without getting too far down the road? So there's a shift that's happening in case you go to your doctor and they start asking you how many minutes you're exercising, because there's a movement called exercise is medicine. And that is part of it. It's just enormous what movement can do for us, and we'll talk about that in just a minute as well. So by the time we're dealing with medicine 2.0 or 3.0, and we're looking at the impact of what's going on right now, if the average American is dealing with some kind of metabolic syndrome, or some inflammation, or we're not sleeping, or we're not getting the nutrition that we need, then the impact to our workplaces is huge. So I wanted to keep it to a little bit, how do you feel about these things? But if everybody around us is dealing with these things that are contributing to increased costs and increased time off, you all deal with that all the time. By the time you're talking about workman's comp, or by the time you're dealing with I don't feel well. Even they can be at work and still not performing to their best because they didn't sleep, or you're groggy, or you got foggy brain, or you've got a lot of different things happening. So it doesn't just have to be, hey, I'm taking a day off because I'm sick, I got the flu, or whatever. You can be experiencing decline in productivity of your employees, of our employees, just because we have these other factors that are going. And they could be underlying factors. They could be bubbling up to the top where you really literally know that you have to deal with them. But all of these things cost. Unhealthy people cost. They cost us a lot. And my only little mini commercial is, I have found in my practice that at least helping people understand where they are as individuals, then they take themselves to work. If we figure these things out for ourselves and we have some way to know what we're working on, then that at least gives you the eye-opening part to be able to move around better. And I just find when people do that on an individual level, they're more likely to find their why, and they're more likely to change some kind of behavior because they've identified a behavior that they want to change. Make sense? So you start building the individuals, and all those individuals make up our businesses. And if we kind of get a culture of a little bit, doesn't have to be crazy, if we get a culture that's a little bit healthier, then I find that workplaces end up saving some of that money. They don't have as much time off. They have higher productivity when they're at work, and the wheels on the bus go round and round in a happy way, or in a better way. So that's where we are. Unfortunately, all of these metabolic things that are going on are running rampant in our communities and in our nation at this point. And the unfortunate side effects of that are a lot of these increased costs and just plain illness. So wellness doesn't have to just be the absence of disease, okay? It can be a bit more than just not being sick. Being well or being fit or those type of things have been described as doing everything you have to do in your day and then still having the energy to do what you want to do. So if you finish work and you wanted to take a walk and you're not dead tired on your feet, you're working on what your fitness and your wellness is at that point. So food is information is our next slide, and that's Dr. Mark. He is all about that. So whatever we put in informs our body all the way down to the cellular level, how you're supposed to work, or what are we going to do with that, or how's it going to work. We're at the center of a crisis of abundance. Let that sink in for a second. We have ancient genes in our bodies that, that respond to what they need to, and the modern diet that we are in, especially in the West, they're not a fit for our genes. Our ancestors, were hunter-gatherers. Maybe they would have a kill and they would eat on that for a couple of days, and then maybe they would go several days without anything. And so they were working on foraging and plant materials or whatever until they got to the next kill where they could go back into that. Well, we don't have that. I mean, I could go from here, to the corner of Spring Valley and Far Hills, and I could stop 5 times and get something to eat if I wanted to. I mean, in just a block. So I don't think we have a problem of abundance in the negative side. We have a problem of abundance because we have too much, and we are taking advantage of it a bit too much in some cases. So that creates its own problem. That creates its own problem there. So we talked about the bio-individuality. Everybody is different, and you need to take that into account when we're dealing with nutrition. The next statement that I like of his is that we are overfed but undernourished. I got a few nods on that one. Let that sink in. Our standard American diet is not working. It's causing the metabolic syndrome. It's causing the inflammation. It's causing the decrease in health. It's causing the 4 horsemen. And we have control over that, is the good news. So quality matters more than quantity, even though we're quantity kind of people in this day and age with our biggies and with the super sizes and with the different things like that. So let's just go into a couple little bullet points here now that I've got you all good and depressed with what happens with that. So when we're talking about proteins, everybody knows what proteins do for you? Tell me what they do for you. Why do we care about proteins? Muscle. Building blocks, the building blocks of anything are proteins. We need complete proteins for that to happen, which is why we're not going to get into the argument today of vegetarianism or veganism or whatever. For our intents and purposes, with the authors that I have shared with you, they both deal with quality animal proteins because they're complete proteins. Doesn't mean we can't get complete proteins by combining different things and all of that. That's just a different talk, okay? I'm not bashing on anybody. But between these two authors, between 20 and 30 grams 3 times a day if we're trying to build some muscle, okay? We care about muscle, which is in another slide or so. I'm just going to jump ahead. We care about muscle because that is the active part of our metabolism, number 1. And number 2, we need that strength as we get older in order to stay independent. I don't believe anybody in their 20s and 30s wants to start planning for which nursing home are they going to be in their 80s. It's just that we don't want to go there unless we have to. And we're very blessed in this nation that there are a lot of really great places to go if we need that. But that's not what we want to deal with. So we need our protein to build muscle. We need closer to that 30 grams per meal if you're trying to build muscle, or if you're extremely active, you need to be a little bit higher on the list of that. And it's just super important as we age, as we're talking about that part. So I don't want to zip through any of this, but I want to cover it, and then we can come back to whatever might happen. So if you're thinking about a checklist, and the best way that I have seen for people to get a handle on their nutrition is to just keep a nutritional diary for a couple of days. You just keep a little journal. Whether it's electronic, there's a bunch of apps out there now that are really, really great, or whether you just plain do it the old-fashioned way and just write it down. I just find when people commit it to paper, number 1, if you write it down before you eat it, you're going to watch what you eat a little bit more. It's just what happens. Oh, I don't want to write that down. Okay, so I won't have it right now. And I'll kick it down the road, maybe have it later. So people who are really looking at it objectively tend to have a bit more success with changing the behaviors. So that's just a side on that. So proteins are our building blocks. They are essential to us as human beings. And we have to have proteins and we have to have fats. Believe it or not, we don't have to have carbohydrates. We have to have proteins and fats to live. And we'll talk about the rest of that. Go ahead and flip it. All right. So with your vegetables and your fruits, we are trying to eat the rainbow. This is where a lot of us fall short. Usually people are pretty good with their fruits, but I'm not so sure that we're always so great with our vegetables, especially in the amounts that are recommended for us to get within a day. So Dr. Mark loves half of your plate and vegetables at each meal. Preferably not too many starchy vegetables. So we're not looking at French fries and corn on half the plate, and then your meat and then your potatoes on top of the potatoes on top of the whatever. So green leafy if we can, whether it's cooked, whether it's a salad, whether it's whatever, you're just trying to deal with the amount of that. And usually a half a cup is a serving. So if you're trying to get 4 to 6 servings, then you're looking at 2 to 3 cups. And you just kind of do your math and work your way around that way. 5 to 9 servings per day, if we can get them. And the more the merrier when it comes to our vegetables, especially the lower glycemic vegetables, those non-starchy ones. And if we can get 1 to 2 pieces of fruit a day, that's usually enough. Again, because of the fructose that's in it and dealing with the sugar that we'll talk about in a second. But if we can deal with 1 to 2 servings of fruit and really concentrate on getting our vegetables, they're so important because that's where a lot of our phytonutrients are. So the plants are healthy, we eat the plants, and therefore we get the healthy stuff from the plants. The only time that gets into trouble is if our plants have been sprayed with pesticides or with different things like that, and then that causes problems in our system, which leads to inflammatory type of things, because our gut's like, what are these things on here? I don't recognize this. I don't need to be ingesting pesticides. I'm going to fight against that. So here comes that immune system, inflammation goes up, and we end up having some issues with that. That's the biggest reason for organic. And I didn't do the slide, there's something called Environmental Working Group, and they have something called Dirty Dozen and Clean 15. Have you heard of that before? Okay. And it's easily searched. What it really is, the Dirty Dozen, if you can, of those 12 foods, if you can afford to do those 12 organic, that's a good place to put your money. The Clean 15 usually have a thicker skin. They usually have something that doesn't permeate as much, so they don't get as contaminated by all the different stuff that happens when people are growing fruits and vegetables. So if you can do the Dirty Dozen and keep as much of that when you have that in your diet, keep as much of that organic as possible, then it's just going to keep you healthier. Again, because of the inflammation part that happens with all of it. All right. We were talking a little bit about grains before we got started, as Julia was talking about celiac disease and those different types of things that go along with it. So grains are not the same as they were when our grandparents were here. There's been a lot of morphing and a lot of changing to the grains, and what we're finding now is that grains should almost be a treat as opposed to the main part of our meal. I know that's not very Ohioan, but that's where it was meat and potatoes in our family. That was pretty much it, and a lot of bread and butter. Sometimes you have a sensitivity to the gluten part, which is a part of the grain, and you may or may not even know it. So a gluten sensitivity feels like you had a big meal, and whether you had bread or whether you had crackers or whether you had anything in the grain family like that. Dr. Mark calls it a little food baby. So if you're reacting to something, you ever just kind of get bloated after you've had something, and you look down and you're like your belly just it's a little distended? You're probably having a reaction to something that you ate. Some people get real lethargic, some people get crabby, some people get the food baby, but your body is saying something about that isn't resonating. Again, we have ancient genes, but we have modern food. And those two things don't always work real well with us. While we're talking about genes, it's another Dr. Mark thing. He says when we're looking at our behavior or when we're dealing with trying to change something, people will say, oh, it's in my genes. Everybody in my family has coronary heart disease. I'm bound to get coronary heart disease, okay? Well, the way genes work is we have that marker that may predispose us to something, but it doesn't mean that the gene needs to express. Only when they express or they turn on are they kind of working, maybe down that road of what happens with our parents. It's a science called epigenetics, and what epigenetics tells us is that in some cases we have control over whether the gene expresses or not. So Dr. Mark will say that genes load the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger. So we have the lifestyle control. We have control over most of our risk factors, but we have to deal with where are we in that. Back to your individuality. What is your family history? What has been your personal history? What comes up in your blood tests? What comes up in those things? So you're managing where you are and what you're doing in order to play the rest of these cards here. So that's a little aside from gluten and grains, but that sensitivity comes out, and then you get all of these things that are sensitivities or are problems lead us back to inflammation. And my very, very beginning part was inflammation is at the base of most disease. It's just insidious. It just stays there, and it just breaks down those cells, and it makes them a little less efficient, makes them a little less healthy, makes them a little less workable. And then when we get enough of that going on, it leads to another problem. So think of rust on your car. Oxidative stress to the cell causes the cell to start having these bad side effects, so that then down the road it can lead to problems. Which is why if we're dealing with our children having such poor diets, we're going to be in a heap of trouble by the time they hit their 20s and 30s if we don't change what happens with some of those types of things. Alrighty, after greens we go into healthy fats. So everybody back in the 60s and 70s demonized fats because fats have 9 calories per gram, carbohydrates and proteins have 4. So obviously it had to be fats making us fat. Well, it's not fats that make us fat, it's sugar that makes us fat. And we need fats. Remember, proteins and fats are the 2 essential nutrients that we need in our bodies. So you're dealing with, if we can go organic and cold pressed with our fats, then we're going to get a little bit more nutrition out of them. So organic extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil. You want to look for the things, if you're cooking in some oils, that don't smoke or burn, because that's called a flash point. We want to make sure that we have a high flash point. That's why coconut oil, avocado oil, those have and butter, have a little higher flash point than trying to fry in extra virgin olive oil. Olive oil on your salad, making it up in different things like that, or at a low heat cooking stays very safe. But if it gets too hot, it becomes unstable, and we don't need our health food to become carcinogenic. So we don't need to burn stuff, because then that's going to cause that inflammatory response in our system. Okay? Nobody's asleep. That's good. All right. So we have ghee, which is clarified butter. They take the milk fat out of it. So for people who are allergic to dairy, they may be okay with ghee, because we take the casein comes out of it. So then that would just have to be something that's workable. Please look at the avoids, because those are the oils that are used in most processed foods. Soybean oil, canola oil, corn oil, shortening, anything hydrogenated has things added to it that are going to be inflammatory in our systems. So you really need to become a label reader, where you just flip things over. If it's got 29 ingredients, all ending in some weird suffix, then it might not be something that's going to go in your body really well. If it has fewer than 5 ingredients, chances are it's going to be closer to a real whole food, and your body's going to be able to handle that a whole lot better. But you see what happens. We start getting these foods that are different than they were even when we grew up. And then we have these different things that are added to processed foods, or that are added to fast foods, or that are added to anything like that. and it's not recognizable. If it's not recognizable, then our body's like, what do you want me to do with this? And to a certain extent, it can handle it, but then it has to start storing it. It always reminds me of the I Love Lucy thing, which I'm dating myself, but when the food's coming down, it's coming down, you've seen that clip, where the candy's coming down the conveyor belt and they don't know what to do with it, sticking it in their pockets. I always think of that as ourselves. It's like, what am I supposed to do with this? Oh my gosh, I don't know what to do with it. I'll stick it in this pocket. I'll stick it in this pocket. I'll slap it here. I'll slap it there. Because if we can't use it, we're going to store it. And sometimes we can't even unlock the storage to be able to use it if we want to. That becomes another problem. If this metabolic part that we're trying to deal with does not work the way it's supposed to, then we get behind the 8 ball here, and we have to figure out, and we usually have to, with our healthcare professionals, go back and figure out what's going on. And Medicine 2.0 is going to say, here you go, this is what's going on. Take something, here, take this to heal your belly. And Medicine 3.0 is going to be, what's going on here? What do we need to do? What do we maybe need to remove from your life so that you're not upset in your belly? So are you with me on the 2s and the 3s, basically? Okay, so these other oils, other fats, like the canolas, like the shortening, like the Crisco, like all the fake stuff, is going to be contributing to inflammation, not decreasing inflammation. Okay, so on we go to beverages. So I don't think there's anybody in the world that doesn't know that water is good for them, right? We have to start watching a little bit with our bottled water because we're not sure about the plastics that the containers are in. So that's why you see everybody carrying around whatever they can, whenever they can. None of these things, if it happens on an occasion or occasionally, is going to be that detrimental to us. If we do things that are damaging over time on a regular basis, then we may have to worry about it. But if most of the time, you're drinking your filtered water, or you're having that, and you're running out the door and you need to grab a bottle because you're going to be that's not going to be something that gets to you quickly. I'm not talking about the exceptions. I'm talking about when people are dealing with, I do this all the time. I have 12 of these a day, and it's all out of plastic, or this plastic has been sitting in my car, or it's been sitting in the store. Those are the things that we just don't know. So you can also look at the plastic to see if it's free of the chemicals that are harmful to you as well. So watch your bottled water because of the plastic. Watch the sugar in the drinks. A little bit goes a long way. So I'm going to take just a second to talk about sugar and sweeteners, and a second probably will be like 5 minutes. But we're worried about all of this because a little bit goes a long way. Here's recommended for an entire day for children and teens and for adults. This is 6 teaspoons of sugar. Okay? This is a McDonald's Coke with 20 teaspoons of sugar. So, if we drive through McDonald's for our morning Coke every morning, I know people that do this, I'm not pointing fingers, I'm sure nobody in this room does this. And this is a large Coke from McDonald's, it's 80 grams of sugar, which is 20 teaspoons of sugar. Okay? So if we're supposed to have 5 or 6 a day, and we get 20 at breakfast driving through, help me with my math, this is 4 days, right? So if I'm having 4 days worth every day, and that's just at breakfast, and if I start my day with this, chances are I'm going to have more cravings for sugar because that's the way sugar works. It is addictive. It's more addictive than cocaine. I'm not recommending that we all go out and start a Coke habit, but it is more addictive, okay? And it is everywhere. I love the story when my grandkids used to come and stay with me on the weekend, and we would go to the store and I would let them buy a snack. Okay? And as they got older, I say, okay, you can do anything, but it can't have high fructose corn syrup in it. So you're going down, they want their animal crackers or they want whatever. And they would say, is this okay? I'm like, I don't know, read the label. They were old enough to read. So they'd flip it over and they'd read the label. And by the time we got to the end of the aisle of all the stuff that they were wanting, my grandson Tyler says, Grandma, it's in everything. And I'm like, Yeah, it is. So another talk that I did, I had all my little sugar bags with me, and one of the gentlemen came up, and he happened to be a Mountain Dew guy, so I don't think I have my Mountain Dew out here, but similar to this. He goes, nobody would ever just sit and eat that. And I'm like, no, they wouldn't. You're going to drink it. And it's going to go down a whole lot quicker. And it's going to go down a whole lot faster and smoother and ping all those really happy places in your brain. Our brains love it. They want it. And when we have it all the time, then it continues to drive the behavior. Okay? So if we're supposed to have, we're supposed to have? We're supposed to have this, and we get this. That's part of the problem. Is this inflammatory? Yeah, it is. Big time. And so in our infinite wisdom as human beings, we said, okay, so let's not do sugar from sugar cane and all that because you're telling me that's bad. Let's invent sweeteners. Let's invent sugar alcohols. Let's invent all these things that we can still have it in there and people will buy it and it'll be just fine. And we'll say, oh, don't drink the regular soda, drink a diet soda. That's good for you. Unfortunately, if you're a diabetic, dietitians will tell you, go ahead and drink the diet. Get the stuff that's low sugar. Get the things that are like that. Vocabulary word of the day, excitotoxin. It's got the word toxin in it, which is going to be good. Excitotoxins are problems with our brains. Our neurodegenerative things that we saw as one of the four horsemen are affected by these chemicals. Sweeteners are chemicals. There's really none of them that we can get away with. People are really working with stevia at this point where they think that that's the lesser of the evils. I'm going to say to you, go ahead and have the real thing in this amount, a sprinkling, an occasional, a treat, or whatever, because the frankenfoods and the man-made stuff that we're trying to get away with is not part of our ancient genes. And it's going to lead to inflammation. If we get inflammation in our gut, then we have obviously digestive problems. But our gut and our brains are totally connected. So you've got all of this happening, and if we get the brain barrier and the gut barrier that are out of whack, then we get into lots of problems. And that inflammation is going to lead to some things that are pretty serious, whether it's digestive diseases, whether it's just metabolic diseases, or whether we're really dealing with our brain function and our abilities. And I want that to be a little scary because it is everywhere. Everywhere. I'm not going to shame anybody that had donuts or that had a muffin, but I want you to know, I looked it up because when Deanna came in with them, I was just curious. Now, these are all choices. We all have choices every day, all the time. Always have choices, okay? But the muffin is 39 grams of sugar. That's 10 teaspoons, a little bit more than this, okay? So if we're allowed to have 5 to 6, then that's 2 days worth right there. You can have it, choose it. But you just, if you're trying to stay on your budget, then you know what happens. And each one of the donut holes had 4 grams. So a donut hole is pretty much the daily recommended part of what we should have all day long. Okay? So the rest of your day is your vegetables and your proteins and your healthy fats. Good to go, right? Good to go. We got it. The things that I really love, this is a vitamin water. It's good for us, isn't it? Vitamin water, 32 grams of sugar. Isn't yogurt good for us? Here's 1 container of Yoplait vanilla, 32 grams of sugar. Gatorade, 26 grams. Ketchup, 2 teaspoons of ketchup is 8 grams. Oh, here's the Mountain Dew, 77 grams in a 20 ounce. That's not even the big gulp, take a bath in it kind of thing. So, all right. I told you it would take me a while for sugar, but that's where we go. Okay? All right. So let's circle back around on our beverages here for just a second. We are to have half of our body weight in ounces of water a day if we can. That keeps us hydrated, because a lot of times our hunger is dehydration as opposed to hunger. So drink that glass of water, before you tear into something, in case you're just thirsty instead of hungry. Okay, so that's filtered as best, just like it says, but half of your body weight in ounces. So if you weigh 100 pounds, you're looking at 50 ounces, and everybody gets to do their own math. Okay, all right. So we could spend all day on alcohol. I'm just going to say, you're going to flip that one there. Guidelines for a healthy life are fewer than 7 servings a week, and ideally no more than 2 in a day. So binging on the weekends, not so great. And it's a liver and kidneys problem. We have to filter the toxins that are in the alcohol, and the toxins are what makes us happy. That's what goes to our brain and gives us all that good feeling. Okay, so a dietitian that I worked with at one point was talking about it basically takes 3 days for your kidney and liver to clean all that and to clear it all out. And I say, well, so if you're drinking on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, then let's say Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, whatever. You get my drift. So some people are always behind if they have a cocktail every night. And all she kept saying was like washing your clothes in dirty water. I don't know why that stood with me, because apparently I don't like washing clothes in dirty water. But that was kind of the visual that she gave me when our bodies are trying to clear out these toxins. So the same thing's going to go for other things that are not accepted in our individual bodies. So we're always kind of playing catch up with what's going on with all of that stuff. Okay? All right. So Dr. Attia talks about, it's really easy for him to talk about, don't eat too many calories, don't eat too few calories. Consume your protein and your essential fats, get your vitamins and minerals, and avoid pathogens and toxins like mercury and lead. So don't eat the paint off of the off of the wall. Mercury and lead, we could talk all day long about fish or about things that have mercury in it. You're just watching and trying to get the best quality that you can. That's his advice to his patients about nutrition. Just kind of do the best you can and try to get these things in there. I already talked about the journal. And does anybody in here have a continuous glucose monitor that they wear? My daughter has one. So anyway, it's a tool used so that you always can tell where your blood sugar is. So for healthy people that would use that for a period of time, then you would see what your body's response is to what you just ate. And sometimes those, I think we're going to see a lot more of them in the future, because it's a learning tool. You can say, okay, I had eggs for breakfast and my response to that was fill in the blank. Or I had a muffin for breakfast and my response to that was fill in the blank. All right, let's move it on. All right. Exercise is medicine. We talked about that. So if we're looking at our healthy life, we're going to eat, move, sleep, repeat. So we're going to eat nutritiously. We're going to try to do those things that we were just talking about. We're going to try to move regularly. Some of the times that you're moving needs to be vigorously. So you can take that walk every day. 7,500 steps is going to reduce your mortality and morbidity rate by about 20%. What a great deal. All you got to do is go out, walk around the block. We're begging people to get off the couch and to get moving, because our lives are so sedentary at this point. It is our most powerful tool for slowing physical, cognitive, and emotional problems, because moving keeps everything going. Even if that junk's in there, even if we've got the toxins in there, we can move them through a little bit faster. They don't just have to sit there. We can take care of them and use some of them. So the more we do, the better we are. And those are all of your benefits. Exercise helps everything. Usually people care that it helps their sex life, but it helps circulation, it helps energy, it helps anxiety, it helps depression, it helps endurance, it helps strength. It is the wonder drug right there, and it's free. Click it on. ACSM, these are your guidelines. A minimum of 150 minutes of exercise per week. That's 30 minutes a day. Cardiorespiratory, aerobically, we need to try to accumulate that. If we can toss a couple days of strength on top of that, if we can toss a little bit of function, balance, mobility on top of that, yay, then we're really cruising along. There's your 7,500 steps. reduce the risk and reduce depression, reduces everything. So take a walk. So there you have it. Your 150 minutes per week. If some of that can be vigorous, it's even better. And all that means is, I don't know if anybody is familiar with high intensity interval training, HIIT, they call it HIIT training. Really, it just means at some point in your bout, you have to say, this is hard, and I don't really want to do this for a really long period of time. And you don't. Your whole exercise bout doesn't have to be at the highest intensity. It can be here, and then up, and then down, and then up, and then down. That actually trains your heart and your muscles as well or better. And you can usually do a high-intensity bout of 10 to 20 minutes, be done with it, walk away, go do whatever else is next, fix your salad, and be ready to go. If we're not addressing cardiorespiratory or strength or muscle or any of those types of things, then we start to get into that physical decline. And if we're not feeding it healthfully, then we've got 2 strikes, and you can see how we can decline pretty quickly. So walking around the block, getting 7,500 steps a day helps with the cognitive part. I think it's probably the best insurance that we've got for our future health and for our independence. So when we're dealing with the strength aspect of it, you can see it decreases with age if we don't use it. And the guidelines for the resistance part, you got your rep ranges there. If we're dealing with 2 to 4 sets of each exercise, and depending on what you want to do, here's your individuality again. If we're improving strength, we're in an 8 to 12 rep range. If we're improving strength and we're just getting started at it, then we're going to go a little higher in the reps until you get that base built. And then if we're going for endurance, it goes even higher in that 15 to 20. So people ask that all the time. How many reps am I supposed to be doing? And I'll say, whatever you can do. How much weight do I use? Whatever you can use. If you can use an 8-pound weight and you're using a 3-pound weight, you're not going to get stronger. So, all right, moving along. I spent too much time on sugar. Okay. Flexibility, mobility, and balance, those are all things that we can take advantage of. You're all out working in the workplace. You're not sitting all day long. Hopefully you get up and move around a little bit. But when you're looking at your exercise program, it's easy to kind of incorporate the flexibility and the balance and all of those types of things right in your workout. So maybe you're doing curls, maybe you do them on one foot. And maybe you spend a couple of minutes warming up, getting your body warm, then you work on some of your flexibility, and then you take that on into your workout. So it can be programmed within that amount of time that you're allotting. You just have to know what the goal is. So again, you're going back to what's your why? What am I trying to do here? What do I want to accomplish in this exercise bout? And then you start building, well, this is the guideline, and this is what helps with it. All right. And then we do all of that during our exercise because we want everything to be nice and strong. Exercise basically, when you're doing your strength training, is actually breaking down the muscle. And recovery is when we actually build the muscle. So if we're sleeping terribly and we're not getting our rest and we're eating crappy and we're trying to exercise, chances are it's not going to do as well for us as if we can get that sleep that we need to have. There are a number of things that interrupt our sleep, and some of the guidelines for that. Make sure that the room is dark, make sure that it's cool, make sure that you're not watching super stimulating things just before you go to bed. You want to watch your screen time, watch all of those different types of things. But at sleep and at rest is when our body repairs. It's when our strength actually increases, and that last word down there called autophagy, that's another vocabulary word for you today, that's just when our bodies take out the garbage. So if we let the garbage build up in our house for a week without taking it out, we know that would get a little bit nasty. Same thing happens. When we're at rest, everybody's cleaning everything up, and it just gets rid of the cells that have sloughed off or died for that day and tries to deal with all the repairing. So when our sleep is affected, for years and years I said, never mind, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I don't know that anybody's ever said that. But, just it's not that important, it's not that important. It is uber important. It is probably as important. That's why it's in the top 3: eat, move, sleep, repeat. So we have to have all of those happening in some kind of balance in order for that to work. So that was the decreased caffeine. Don't exercise too close to bedtime. That really affects some people. The cool room, the limit your screen time. Sometimes people like to take a nice bath before they go to bed, and that kind of calms them down, kind of changes the heat in their body so that they can have a cooler sleep time with all of that. But we want to try to bring that anxiety down before going to sleep. If you're stressed out, sleeping poorly, and unable to make time for exercise, be as careful as possible with what you eat. That makes sense, doesn't it? You can't out-exercise a bad diet. That makes sense. We just figured that out here. We're supposed to have this, and we're getting this. It's going to take a lot to catch up if we're doing this every day, okay? And junk food is not food, it's just junk. That's Dr. Mark. You don't get anything from it. So eat your nutritious, colorful, real food. Move regularly, outside if you can, get some sunshine, take a walk with a friend. All of those things are known to really decrease depression and decrease anxiety and decrease problems. Try to get your sleep 8 to 10 hours a night. That allows you to recover. If you get less than 6 hours of sleep or less than 5 hours of sleep on a regular basis, then you're going to start having some ill side effects from that. And usually the next day, you'll be craving this. You'll be looking for more carbohydrates because your body's just like, come on, let's get going, let's get going. So better to take a nap, I guess, than maybe not at work, but take a nap and instead of shooting the Mountain Dew with that one. So we eat, we move, we sleep, and we recover, and we repeat, and those are our basics, although there's a lot to be done in each of the categories. But if we're looking to deal with healthy life, healthy long life, then we really need to, I would encourage you to take a little inventory about, if I had one thing that I could change today that I know would improve my health, fill in the blank. That's what I would ask you to do. So if you think that falls in the nutritional side, if that falls in the movement side, if that falls in sleep hygiene, then so be it. But as a health coach, the first thing that you usually ask somebody, because you know the answers, what is one thing that you could do today that would improve your health long term? And then you have to determine whether that's worth doing it or whether there's a reason for you to do that. Because our behavior does not change without some kind of reason. We just don't. I think we're just lazy. We're just easy to do the same thing. Oh, I'll get to that. Oh, it's not Monday. Oh, it's not the first of the month. Oh, it's not whatever. So if you figure out what that one thing is that could help, then I'm just going to encourage you to think about that and then see if there's something that you can do behavior-wise to incorporate that just so that you feel better. Because it's a lot more fun to feel better. None of us like to visit people in the hospital. And that's what we're looking at. Thank you for not falling asleep and for allowing me to talk quickly. I brought this one because I think it's interesting as well, and then I promise I'll shut up. People are fed by the food industry, which pays no attention to health, and are treated by the health industry, which pays no attention to food. There's 2 of our 3, and we toss our sleep in there. There's a whole bunch of books written on that. So I'm happy to be a community resource. I talk to people all the time. That's my contact information. I brought some cards if anybody cares about that. And thanks for coming.